Morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the February 1st, 2024 State Board of Education meeting. I'm Eric Davis, Chair of the Board, and I call this meeting to order. Delighted to welcome all board members, advisors, on-site visitors, online listeners, and social media followers. You can follow the North Carolina State Board of Education on social media at EDStateBoard_NC. And remind the audience and those listening that this body meets monthly with its official meeting scheduled for the Thursday of this month. Yesterday, we held our discussion meeting on items that will be before us today. And also remind you that you can follow our meeting online and review all of our materials at SBE meetings at www.dpi.nc.gov. Board members, you're reminded that it's our duty to avoid conflicts of interest and the appearance of conflicts of interest as we handle the work of this board. Does any member of the board know of any conflict of interest or any appearance of conflict with respect to any matters coming before us at this meeting? If so, please state them for the record. If during the meeting you become aware of an actual or apparent conflict of interest, please bring the matter to the attention of the chair. It will then be your duty to abstain from participating in discussion on the matter and from voting on the matter. This time I call on my colleague, Mr. Wendell Hall, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. May we all stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. We'll begin our meeting today with welcoming the newest member of the State Board of Education team, Dr. Mike Williams. Dr. Williams started his career as a math teacher, became a principal, and then superintendent of 3 school systems, and now serves on the Roanoke Rapids School Board. Since retiring, he's contributed part-time to various education-related roles, including coaching principals, serving as a liaison, and acting as an interim superintendent. Dr. Williams continues to be actively engaged in state-level education, holding positions on many boards, all while remaining committed to his local community and family. Dr. Williams, we're delighted to have you join the State Board of Education team. We welcome your advice and counsel, and we thank you for your years of service to our students in North Carolina. The floor is yours, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, Superintendent Truitt, members of the board, and various advisors, I thank you for the warm words of greeting this morning and for the warm welcome that I've received from various members of the board and the staff as I prepare to take the seat at this table. It's an honor and a privilege to be here. I represent the hundreds of school board members from across the state, and I hope to bring to the table as I can and afforded an opportunity to share their perspective on various matters under consideration by this board. We all share a common interest, and that is the children of this state, and affording to them the best opportunities we can provide to educate themselves and prepare themselves for their futures. And I thank you for the opportunity to join in that effort and that undertaking. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Colleagues that come forward, we'd love to take a picture with our newest member.
For sure.
For our next recognition, I'll call on Dr. Keisha Bryant for a series of very special recognitions. Dr. Bryant.
Good morning, good morning, Chair Davis, Vice Chair Duncan, Superintendent Truitt, and all the members of the board. I'm ecstatic to be here on this morning as we kick off the celebration of School Counseling Week next week to honor these prestigious schools. We are here to honor the recipients of the North Carolina School Counseling Diamond Award. The North Carolina School Diamond Award is a joint collaboration with NCDPI and the North Carolina School Counselor Association that recognizes the school counseling programs that demonstrate exemplarily data-informed and outcome-based comprehensive school counseling programs. North Carolina is one of 5 states to have an award to recognize the work of school counselors. School counselors that earn this award in North Carolina will also be, and as of yesterday, are what we call ASCA ramped, recognized ASCA model program schools, and will be awarded nationally by the American School Counselor Association, which is the highest honor that you can have. The following school programs were recognized back in November at our fall conference and will be recognized again in July at the ASCA summer conference, At this time, I'm going to call each school, which is 6 of the 8 that are represented here. We have 2 schools that are joining us virtually, which is Brooks Magnet Museum Elementary School of Wake County Public Schools and Siler City Elementary School of Chatham County Schools that could not be in person today. In the building, we have Mills Park Elementary with school counselors Nancy Snyder, Principal Annie Paul, and Terry Armstrong, joined by their senior administrator, Dr. Tambrin Hamilton Simmons. We have Wake Forest Middle School with their counselors Charlotte Purnell, Jamie Gordon, and Rhonda Pertell, along with their principal, Dr. Chris Bradford. We have Roseville Middle School with their counselor Stacy Hayes and Jessica Elliott and their principal Angela Cooper. We also have Neuse River Middle School with their counselor Ruth Chapman. We have Garner Magnet High School with their, who happens to be North Carolina School Counselor of the Year, Dr. Stephanie Nielsen, Jennifer Chaucho, Marcel Pettis, Bertina Creasy, and their principal Matt Price. And last but not least, we have SCORE Academy with counselors Erica Clarkson and Gayla Hollingsworth, all of Wake County Public Schools. Please give them a hand of applause at this time. Thank you for this time. And now they're going to take pictures.
to extend our congratulations and appreciation to all of our counselors across the state, but particularly this terrific group of fine representatives of the terrific work that counselors are doing for our students all over North Carolina. Also like to welcome someone back to this room that we enjoyed having here for a number of years, and glad to have him back in North Carolina, and that's Superintendent Robert Taylor with the Wake County School System. We'll now take a 15-minute break and so we can celebrate with our guests. welcome back. We're back in session, and we'll now turn to the superintendent for her report. Superintendent Truitt.
Thank you, Chair Davis, and good morning to everyone. So lots to report on this month as Rupen pulls up the presentation. Thank you. So I will start with the superintendent's quarterly meeting, which was held graciously by Rowan Salisbury Schools in downtown Salisbury at the Wallace Education Center. We had a very full agenda with our superintendents, where we were able to go over the year-over-year recovery analysis that this board heard last month. And then that same week, they received their own district year-over-year analysis, which, of course, as you all have heard before, superintendents are using this analysis to figure out what interventions they need most for their students. We also shared with them the latest in school performance grade redesign. Several superintendents have been serving on a committee to help us complete that work. And we shared with them our plan for the short session in order to once and for all do away with our decade-old 80-20 model for school performance grade redesign. We also provided the SIS update. As you all know, we are moving away from PowerSchool and to Infinite Campus. And so there are about, I think, 20 to 30 districts that are going to be part of the pilot for the migration from PowerSchool to Infinite Campus. So we talked about what that is going to look like. You can imagine that our superintendents are very anxious to get as much information as possible about that. We also shared information about computer science grad requirements. This is also top of mind for our superintendents, and you saw yesterday that there are upwards of 20 different courses just for that would count for middle school computer science requirement, and then 40 for our high schools. So definitely excited to see that coming to fruition. And then we shared in greater detail with them the new teacher working conditions survey, which will be going out soon. And we shared the good news that the survey has literally been cut in half, and that teachers will be able to have their own unique login that will come through their email instead of having to get a little slip of paper, which is how we've been doing it for a very long time. And the slips of paper have your code on it, and they get lost, and so on and so forth. We also, thanks to SAS, had the opportunity to sit down with the education appropriation chairs in the legislature. This is important because we rely on our legislators to really have, we need them to have the same understanding that this board has about why we are asking for what we are asking every legislative session. What is the data that we are using to drive our asks? And so what, amongst other things, what this group of people heard was what our year-over-year data is telling us. And so, for example, you can see here, if you look very closely, the chart on the left is the chart that shows which subjects and grades from math, reading, and science, what percentage of schools saw improvement. And what this chart tells us is that 95% of schools saw improvement in third grade, end of grade reading. But only 56, I think is what it says, I can't see it either, but about 56% of schools saw growth in seventh grade reading. That is very concerning, and it shouldn't come as a surprise because our K-5 teachers are employing the skills and that they learned in their science of reading professional development. But that professional development for elementary school teachers is not appropriate for a middle school teacher. So I'm going to talk in a minute about what will be appropriate. And then you can see on these other two slides on the right, top and bottom, is that while we've seen a really big bounce back with third grade reading, in fact, it and English 2 are the only two subjects that are above pre-pandemic levels. We're seeing in seventh grade reading, you can see here that we're not seeing any gains at all. And if we were to look at if you recall, the same graph for math that you saw last month would show that we have been trending a little bit upwards in math, but largely flat. And then we saw the big drop in math, and then math has still not anywhere close to the kind of recovery that we're seeing. And so that brings me to what the department is recommending to the board, and we will recommend to the legislature about what needs to happen in the short session budget requests. And as you heard Mr. Hall say yesterday, the short session is meant to be short. It starts much later than the long session starts, so it will not begin until the end of April, as opposed to January when the long session starts next year. And it is meant to be tweaks to the budget. But we feel very strongly, as I'm sure you would all agree, that there are some changes that we need to make that will cost money, that we need to be able to provide our teachers. And one of those is an expansion of the Excellent Public Schools Act professional development to middle grades teachers. And so, as you all have heard, I believe back in November at the planning and work session, the same company that provided the letters professional development has a professional development for adolescent teachers of adolescents, so our middle grades teachers, that focuses on the specific needs of adolescent readers. And so that professional development will be part of our ask. We also need to do the same thing for math that as a state we have done for reading. You also heard at the November Planning and Work session that the Excellent Public Schools Act is so much more than just letters professional development. That is the centerpiece of it, but the Excellent Public Schools Act, which is the revised Read to Achieve, actually did things like provide early literacy specialists, one per district, who would be required as part of their job description to make sure that the PD that teachers received is being carried out with fidelity. The Excellent Public Schools Act also paid for and directed the Department of Public Instruction to do an RFP to identify a statewide single early literacy screener. It also directed our educator prep programs to align their teaching with the science of reading. It also provided an opportunity for, and really put some teeth in the idea that our districts must adopt curricula now that is aligned to the science of reading. So we need to do the same thing for math. We need to have a statewide policy framework for math with Algebra 1 readiness as its goal. And so two components of that would be, we need an early math screener that is a counterpart or functions the same way as our early literacy screener. A universal screener, meaning that children in the elementary grades are tested 3 times a year so that gaps in their knowledge can be identified and the proper intervention can occur so that that student can remain in core instruction. We do our students a disservice when we pull them out of core instruction and put them in one-on-one tutoring, or not tutoring, but one-on-one instruction with a pull-out teacher when they really, research shows that they do better in core instruction. So we also need to provide elementary professional development in elementary math for our elementary teachers. Too many of our elementary teachers are math phobic themselves. We see that in the low numbers of teachers who pass the math praxis. We also know from our own research that about half of our educator prep programs are only, in the public system, are only providing one math methods course for our elementary school teachers, which is not enough. And we've also learned that half of our residency license programs offer no math methods courses. So we've got some work to do, and again, this needs to be part of a full package that adequately funds the work that we need to see in order to get to that goal of Algebra 1 readiness. School performance grade redesign will absolutely be part of our legislative ask. The 80-20 model sits in statute, and so we need to get that legislation changed. We also want to see grant funding to continue supporting our districts who are mainly in the eastern part of the state so that they can continue to get the supports that they're getting while the department works to build out a very excellent and high quality turnaround model so that we can, as we seek to redefine what low performing means with the school performance grade redesign, we also need to look and see, well, once we have this new model, how are we going to be able to once and for all define who is low performing and learn what supports are needed so that whatever support is being funded by the state is able to be tailored specifically to the needs of that district or that school. And then, of course, all of the data that we are providing our districts that are leading to our students being able to recover academically from the pandemic would not be possible without the Office of Learning Recovery. The Office of Learning Recovery normally waits until the summer to convene districts and go over year data to help them make informed decisions. But we are so committed to supporting our districts to make evidence-based decisions about how to meet the needs of their children that the Office of Learning Recovery is actually going to meet with all of the districts to go over their year-over-year report this spring, this winter, and into early spring. So that group absolutely needs to continue to be funded. Moving on, board members, you will have seen at your desk this morning an invitation to the annual Teacher of the Year event, which will be held on April 5th at the Umstead. And I know that my friends Leah Carper and Kim Jones will be there with bells on. And you can see here, I won't read them off, but you can see here who our Teachers of the Year, our Boroughs Welcome Fund Teachers of the Year nominees are from all of our districts and charter school. And then next you can see that the Principal of the Year finalists have also been named. The 2024 Wells Fargo Principal of the Year list is right here. And we are incredibly excited. That ceremony usually follows a month later. And so we look forward in May to introducing you to the new Wells Fargo Principal of the Year. Next, I had the pleasure of going to Long Mill Elementary School in Franklin County Schools along with advisors Julie Pittman and Tabari Wallace. And we were there to do two things. We wanted to see K-5 classrooms doing science and reading in action, and that is exactly what we saw. We saw teachers who were working very hard to make sure that their students are receiving phonics and phonemic aware instruction along with the other 5 pillars of the high quality early literacy instruction. It was a great day. We had a teacher panel afterward where we were able to get some very specific advice about what it might look like to have grades 4 and 5 participate in the MClass 3 times a year testing, as well as they are already using an early screener for math in iReady that they were able to share both the pros and the cons of that particular screener. So it was a very informative session, and we always love getting specific feedback from the teachers who are in the trenches doing the work every day. We went to Granville County Schools also, both to GC Hawley Middle School and to South Granville High School, where we saw unbelievable career and technical education happening. And here you see us standing with a group of students who are working on their CNA certification, And we are gathered around the bedside of Susie the dummy. And Susie is the name that they have given this dummy. And they were all working to diagnose her and treat her. And these, you know, there's, I love it when we go from a math classroom to a career and technical education classroom, one right after the other, because you see just such greater excitement in our CTE classes than you do when kids are sitting in rows in their academic classes. So these kids were actually able to talk to me about how this class is going to help them after high school, and that is just a great thing to witness. And then last week, of course, was National School Choice Week. And so I spoke at the North Carolina Association for Public Charter Schools at their celebration of their schools. And then I also visited a school in Cary, Cardinal Charter Academy, where you can see little Xavier here was my host for the day. And this is a K-8 school, so again, it's always fascinating to see how schools bridge the gap between those elementary years and those middle grades years. So it was a great day. And I believe that concludes, yes it does, that concludes my report, Chair Davis.
Thank you, Superintendent. Any comments, questions for Superintendent on her report? Ms. Kamnitz?
I don't want to be a broken record, but the screener for 4th and 5th grade, is that in there somewhere?
Yes, it is.
In the short session minutes.
Yes, that is the, it will be just as yours is, the
Yeah.
expansion of Read to Achieve.
Just want
Yes.
to make sure. that-
Yep, that's exactly right. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Superintendent, thank you so much for your report.
Thank you.
Can I ask one question?
Vice Chair Duncan?
On the resetting the performance scale,
Yeah.
is that, which, as you know, this board completely supports the work that's being done there. Is that really a budgetary item, or is that more a policy change item for statutory purposes?
So it is a policy change item mainly, but I do believe, Dr. Smith, that there is a budgetary component to that we are still calculating. Is that correct? Yes.
Okay.
Because we are completely, we're not just changing the 80-20 to 60-40 or 50-50. We are going to be recommending, and this will come to the board in detail, but we are going to be recommending 4 separate grades, and that all schools have the same interface, so that it is very, there will be some IT work that has to be done in order to create this, because we want it to be as transparent and easy to understand as possible. So right now, if you were to just search up any, like Mills Park Elementary, who was here this morning, you may or may not be able to easily find what that school's letter grade is. So we want to make it as easy as possible for our districts to make the shift to this new way of doing things, should it be voted in the affirmative by the legislature. And we want for parents to be able to, we want this to be, the audience for school performance grades should be parents, not real estate agents. And we want for all parents to be able to easily access and understand what the 4 different components of the school performance grade are.
Ms. Kamnitz?
Just to follow up on that, is there still thought that this would be something we would pilot if we got permission to do it, or are you?
So it would have to be piloted with a handful of districts who would be willing. And then, this would, the plan for the legislation would be for it to be, for all of this to be encompassed in one piece of legislation. So the pilot year would be next year. And then the year after that, the districts, both systems would run alongside one another, the 80-20 and the new system. And then the 3rd year, it would be just the new system.
Very good. Any other comments or questions? Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate it. All right, we'll now turn to our committee reports from yesterday's discussions, and we'll begin with the Healthy Responsible Students Committee led by Mr. Reginald Keenan. Mr. Keenan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. I'm Reverend Keenan, and of course, with Mr. Wendell Hall, we bring to the board and to the public, first item for discussion item yesterday, a long morning yesterday, which was a good thing. The first presentation we had by Ms. Karen Farley, talked about the consolidated data report that's required to annually give to the General Assembly, and in that report, there were, as you notice, increase in some of the numbers, and there could be several reasons why you see an increase in reporting, because I think Ms. Fairley is doing a very good job of getting schools and units involved in how to report, proper report. I think maybe also because of better mechanism to detect the problems also. Could be resource officers who are doing a better job to report. So I think Ms. Fairley for a great job and her team for improving the numbers, because if the numbers are not correct, then you got a false reading as to what's going on. And also I think the report indicates that our children continue to suffer from emotional and mental and otherwise non-academic barriers, and there's no doubt those factors contribute to the problems that we see in violence. And of course, the report covers, as you know, the school crime violence, the suspension, expulsion, the corporal punishment, disciplinary reason, alternative learning placement, dropout rates. And all that, again, goes back to, I say, and again, it's backed up by data, that these children have many challenges that we as a board continue to fight. We also had great presentations for two public units. We had Mr. Mark Sales at Swain different schools, schools, and of course he talked about the consolidated data report. And also from Maureen Joy Charter, we had I think Dr. Cannon and Mr. Wall also discuss what they're doing to again give the best for our children. When you look at the numbers, it's still alarming, and I think I've mentioned it to a board member recently that the numbers are bothersome, because it seems like every year we see some improvement, but then again it's a lot got to be done, and that I'm sure bothers all of us. So we as a board and we as a state must continue to try to change those numbers in a meaningful way, and only we can do that. And again, I commend Ms. Fairley for the great work that her department and her workers are doing in that effort. It's hard. I just think that I'm going to go on to the next item, but I just, when you see those numbers, it just hurts to know that children endure these kind of situations, but let's keep working hard. And the next item we had, Mr. Chair, was the issue session about school-based help. And we were fortunate to have Mr. Cody Kinsley, who's Secretary of DHHS, and also Ms. Leah Holman, who did a great job of talking about the investment into mental health and also behavioral health. It was very fortunate that the Medicaid money that came in was very beneficial to making a difference in the lives of our children. And he talked about the fact that it's been underfunded for years, but we are very fortunate to be able to get money to make a difference, and every bit of difference we make is important. He talked about how and also Ms. Hogan talked about how we must invest. We've got to invest in our children. We've got to invest in the community. It's a whole team, and we've heard this conversation over and over. It's just not one person or one group. It's got to be community. You got to have partners to continue to work on that. And I think his department and the vision and the plan is great, but we have to continue to have funding to implement these particular things. And in particular, he talked about the mobile units and different ideas and different plans how to reach the parents, how to reach the community, how to reach the schools. And it's good to know that we have leaders out there who see that same thing we're seeing. And it's good to talk, but when you see the actual results of what they're doing with the money, that gives you encouragement to know that there are some people who wants to see children's lives get better. And we commend him for that and his people. And also we had presented yesterday was Ms. Sarah Commissaro, an assistant professor at Duke Stanford School of Public Policy. And she, of course, she in her research indicated, which we all understand and we heard before, that how the telemedicine and any positive effort that we make to get to our children, and it's important to get to the children before the crisis. You know, we talk about crisis, but it's important that you get there early, you may not have the crisis. And that's why I think that folks don't understand that you can prevent the crisis if you put the necessary personnel and necessary money to cut them off at the path. And she talked about in her studies that the telemedicine access is a great benefit to our children because it reduces the likelihood of autism. It also reduces violence and weapon-related disciplinary infraction. It may be also that the school-based health center and the SISP help reduce disciplinary infractions. And again, all these speakers that we had, they presented information to us to continue to say to all of our constituents and communities that we must continue to invest in our children and their education. And the last item we had, Mr. Chair, was the consent item, the 2023 Health Active Children Policy Report and the 2023 School Mental Health Policy Report. And with that, I conclude my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Keenan. So the Healthy Responsible Students Committee is bringing us two items, HRS 1 and 2, for consideration today. And I note that the presentation by Secretary Kinsley will also show up in our legislative affairs discussions in just a few moments. Any questions for Mr. Keenan on healthy, responsible students? Okay,
Point
thank
of
you.
order, Mr. Chair.
Yes,
I believe HRS 1 is a discussion item.
great catch, Mr. Fafaria. Thank you. So only HRS 2 will be on our consent agenda for today. Thank you for clarifying that. We'll now turn to the Educator Standards and Practice Committee led by Dr. Olivia Oxendine. Dr. Oxendine.
Thank you, Chair Davis. I am Olivia Oxendine. I chair this committee, and joining me in that responsibility is Dr. Donna Tipton-Rogers. Yesterday, and even before yesterday, the month before, we had very, very good discussions around the two applications that have come before us, requesting to become part of our collection of universities, schools of education, and other models that prepare our teachers of North Carolina. Additional information was provided on both of those applications, both Moreland University as well as KIPP. We continue to add that data to our discussion and part of our decision-making process. However, I would like to offer a motion, a substitute motion, other than the one that is appearing in your material today. So if I may, and the motion goes this way. I would like to move that the State Board of Education pause on the two applications that are before us today, and that we as a state board move forward and give in-depth discussion on all the models and all the best practices that prepare our future teachers in North Carolina.
Okay, thank you. Since that item comes to us from the committee, it doesn't need a second. Any questions on that particular motion? Superintendent?
Thank you. These are both residency license programs, correct?
Yes.
Given what we have learned very recently, my team and I, about the lack of math methods courses in our lateral entry license programs, I would in particular like to learn more about how they are, as we did about science of reading, I would like to learn what their approach to elementary math licensure would be.
I think that's a very good point, because as we move toward having these discussions and doing the research and a thorough study of the way we prepare our teachers, I think that needs to be on the table for discussion. Definitely. Other thoughts? I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. Ms.
Maybe-
Moore.
Maybe one thought, as a part of a review of the state board's role in understanding the programs, since there are some that have already been approved, we may want to take a look at some information or data of what's already in operation, to inform
Absolutely.
whether it's actually doing what we need it to do and if it's fulfilling its appropriate purpose.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a wise move. In fact, that particular point highlights that I'd like to ask, in addition to Dr. Oxendine, who has expertise in the university system, and Dr. Tipton Rogers, who has expertise in the community college system, and their lead the Educator Standards and Practice Committee, that Ms. Moore joined that effort due to expertise in the K-12 system. That way we'd have representation from all three areas in doing this model review.
Oh, very good.
All right. Anything else from your committee today?
Just to thank both Moreland, again, to thank Moreland and Kip for the hard work that they invested in these applications. And that is very important, the thinking that goes into the way we prepare our educators, the innovative ideas that come from that. We can benefit from all of that. And that's all that I have to share. We do have another.
Ms. Camden?
I would just suggest that because both of these programs now are going to be in a sort of a limbo, that we make this an urgent task. I mean, not do a thorough job, but make sure that we do it in a timely fashion.
Absolutely. And communicating back to both of these applicants our next steps.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Dr. Oxendine. We'll now move on to the Government and Community Affairs Committee led by Mr. Wendell Hall. Mr. Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Along with Jill Candace and with involvement and support from Ms. Moore, yesterday we presented to the board our short-term priority list for the General Assembly to consider. After hearing everything that was said yesterday concerning the need for additional services for our student population, it appears that everything is sort of like combining and flowing into a good ask this time. With not the last time we didn't get a good ask, but you know we built upon it this time as we asked the General Assembly to look at certain items for funding or even consideration. Those items that were presented yesterday, I will present again. Mr. Chairman, is for action today on our agenda due to the time issue with the General Assembly and their calendar to deal with issues coming before them. But I do want to repeat that one of the priorities deals with, and you will see a blend that blends in with the state superintendent's priority list also. But $4.5 million to continue funding efforts to transform our schools designated as low performing under the standard today of what a low performing school is. A joint ask between the North Carolina Department of Human Health Services for the state of North Carolina, and hearing Mr. Secretary Kinsley yesterday, this joint ask between the board and the health department is around evidence-based prevention and early intervention that addresses topics that he and his team presented to us yesterday at our January 31 board meeting. To be finalized, though, we didn't get the particulars that we needed, but to finalize the report by the board through the leadership with DHHS, with the state board leadership being actively involved in that process. We also asked for support for DPI's efforts to be finalized by board leadership in partnership with the state superintendent across 3 areas that we've identified. The statewide policy framework for math that includes the early math screener, but also professional development for elementary math teachers, which we saw earlier. We heard about earlier from the state superintendent. Support for DPI's efforts to expand literacy, professional development to middle grade teachers, and the expansion of early literacy screener contract from the K-3 to include 4th and 5th grades this particular time. We emphasize that again. Let it be noted that the updates on these recommendations or priorities of all the time will come back to the board as reports occasionally from the chair and vice chair to this committee, to this group at upcoming meetings. That is my report from the committee. Mr. Chairman, we have any questions, we would gladly try to answer them. Vice Chair?
I would like to add to your presentation of these items that our preamble to this list does include a reaffirmation of our support of the school performance grade redesign. I just want to
Yes,
make sure that.
yes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hall. So, the Government Community Affairs Committee is bringing us one item, GAC 1, legislative request, for consideration today. Any comments, questions on that item? Okay, we'll now turn to the Education Innovation and Charter Schools Committee led by Mr. John Blackburn. Mr. Blackburn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I serve as chair of this committee with my co-chair, Ms. Jill Kamnitz. New business, we had a charter school review board update from Ms. Ashley Beccaro regarding the actions taken by the charter review board up to this date. They've had a full agenda and they are moving along nicely with their work. Two discussion items. The first one is the continuation of the SBE policy amendment charter renewal process. Those conversations are continuing with the Charter School Review Board. The chair and the vice chair of this committee are continuing those conversations, so we will bring you updates as those move along. The second EICS report is report to the General Assembly, and this was given to us by Ms. Shania Shaw Coltrane. It was an amazing report. I think it was there was not many dry eyes left in the room yesterday, particularly when we heard some amazing stories of things that are happening in our schools, college promise and cooperative programs. This is really the mission of what North Carolina schools do. And I would be remiss if I didn't call out the two students who spoke to us yesterday and made meaningful things to me. Mr. Michael Green and Ms. LaToya Mason both spoke very heartily and warmly about what they have learned in their classes. So shout out to them and their teachers, their principals, for the great work that's being done there. And then the last thing is that we have a consent agenda. It's the final report on the pilot program begun in 2016 for Innovative School District, and that program is now coming to an end. Mr. Chair, no action items.
Thank you, Mr. Blackburn. So the EICS committee is bringing us one item, EICS 3, on the consent agenda. Any questions for Mr. Blackburn? Very good. We'll now move to the Student Learning and Achievement Committee led by Mrs. Jill Kamnitz. Mrs. Kamnitz.
Thank you, Chair Davis. Dr. Olivia Oxendine and I share the work of this committee. As always, we started off with one item of new business, which was a standards revision update. As we all know, there are a lot of standards undergoing revision right now. Draft 2 of the Healthful Living Survey has closed, and the Data Review Committee will analyze the data to create their report, which then guides the standards writing team as they work on Draft 3. The standards writing team for the arts is working on Draft 2 with a survey to follow the completion of that draft. This month, we highlighted world language. We reviewed the Data Review Committee's recommendations, which guided this standards writing team work on Draft 2. Overall, survey respondents were very satisfied with the new structure of these standards and strands, as well as the vertical alignment between proficiency levels. We also reviewed some samples of standards and objectives. The Draft 2 survey is open currently until early March. And it can't be said enough how grateful we all are to the team at DPI and the many teachers who serve on these committees for these 3 different subject areas and the work that they put into getting the best possible standards for us. So thank you to all of the people involved with this. We have one item which is an action on first read. It's a State Board of Education policy amendment, parental hearing, concern hearings procedures. Mr. Landis briefly went through this with us. It follows our approval of a temporary rule on this topic last month, and this amendment basically aligns our policy with the rule, which was approved by the Rules Committee, I believe yesterday or the day One action item is SLA 2, also a policy amendment, 9th grade students accelerated preparation for college entry, GRAD-006. Public school units are required now to offer a 3-year pathway for high school graduation. This amendment to our policy encompasses the current legislative requirements. It also includes a recommended course sequence for both traditional and block high school schedules, although public school units may adapt the sequences based on their local needs. Our discussion item, SLA 3, also a policy amendment to the use of state-designated assessments for the North Carolina teacher evaluation process. Mr. Michael explained to us that in many of the CTE courses, credential or certification exams and performance-based measurements are used as proofs of learning in addition to the traditional end-of-course multiple-choice test. This amendment would revise policy TEST-016 to include these exams and measurements in the North Carolina teacher evaluation process. Finally, we have a consent item, SLA 4, middle school introduction to computer science elective courses requirements. There is a legislative requirement that each public school unit shall offer an elective introductory computer science course in middle school. This is a listing of all the courses that would fulfill that requirement. And that is the conclusion of our committee.
Thank you, Ms. Kamnitz. SLA is bringing us items 1 and 2 and 4 for consideration today. Any questions for Ms. Kamnitz? Then we'll turn to the Business Operations Committee led by Vice Chair Alan Duncan. Vice Chair Duncan.
Thank you, Chair Davis. Along with John Blackburn, we lead the BizOp Committee, and we have several items on first read this month. BizOp 1 is the approval of contracts over $500,000. We have one contract this month, and that is a contract that would allow the migration of the AS400 IBM system for managed services for public school districts. This would be moved from an existing DIT mainframe to a service contract. It's a 3-year contract with 2 optional 1-year extensions. 40 districts still use this system. It's a much older system, and it is being phased out, generally speaking, but it still is used in a number of places, so we still need to be able to operate that system. The anticipation in response to a question by Mr. Hall was that the system would ultimately be phased out by 2030, although there's obviously some hope to try to do it earlier since our last 2 years are optional contracts. The second item that we have is BizOp 2, which is approval of the 21st Century Community Learning Center grants cohort 17, that we move forward with the application process to then moving towards selection to come back to this board for approval. Susan Brigman presented this item and set out mainly the changes in the process. We've heard about these grants many times in the past, and the department has worked hard to make a very fair system and an equitable system and try to have distribution throughout the state in terms of the importance of these grants. And there are a few additional changes that were made, which is what she emphasized in her presentation. We're being asked to just authorize the process moving forward. If we do authorize that, it would start tomorrow, and it would come back to us for final approval of the proposed awardees for cohort 17 on July 11th. So that's a matter that the board is used to dealing with, but it involves a lot of resources. There's a lot of money involved in these grants. They go from $50,000 to $500,000, depending upon the size of the program. BizOp 3 was from the United States Department of Agriculture Supply Chain Assistance Funds. This is something that's come about over the course of the last 4 years since the pandemic. Our school nutrition people have had difficulty sometimes in getting the proper kinds of nutritional supplies they need. This program is intended to be supportive of local agriculture so we can get fresh food, nutritious food for our students, while at the same time trying to support the schools in acquiring these foods in a timely manner. And that has been a real problem. The supply chain issue has been a problem for the last period of time. That has gotten better, but in some areas of food school system deals with, it still is a challenge. And so we're very appreciative of this funding. It is approximately $35 million of funds. There is a formula for how this money is distributed. There's a base of $5,000 that would go to every district. After that, it's then a scalable proportional amount that goes to each district based on student enrollment. So that is results in a significant amount of money for some of the larger districts to support not just the students in this instance, but also as a support of the community with respect to our very important farming community in North Carolina. Biz Op 4 is a policy amendment. This is as we sort of joke, this is about the shortest amendment we've ever had for policy, and it has to do with the Chief Finance Officer's certification, and we made a fairly significant change to that several months ago. And as part of this report, Alexis Schaus gave us a report on how that is working since the significant amendments were made, and we have the number of vacancies is down from what it was. It's 15 down to 10, and there's a higher level of training that's coming into play for the people who are holding these positions. These positions are tremendously important. I think we cause a school district havoc faster than have issues in the finance office, and we've got a number of people in this room who are well aware of that fact. So it's very important to have highly skilled people in this position and to have the position filled. So we continue that work. The amendment itself was relatively short, and it basically involves 2 years of training on conflicts of interest, 2 hours of training on conflicts of interest on an annual basis as part of the overall training. Biz Op 5 was the after-school robotics grant, and this one has gone through the process, and Dr. Charles Akins presented the recommendations for the recipients of this grant. It's $1 million. There were applications made in excess of $2 million, so they had to actually choose, in some programs that made fine applications for, unfortunately, not receive funds for this, but we have 22 schools that will receive funds, and they're very excited about it. Again, it was a careful process, well thought out, and again, seeks to be equitable throughout the state in terms of how these grants are provided. Dr. Aiken turned out to have a wonderful testimonial. He was very worried about not having a student testimonial, but our own Lily provided a wonderful testimonial of just exactly how important this program is and how excited the students in Hayward County are of having this program available to them, because they were one of the successful recipients. Now we move to discussion items, and we had 3 of those. Biz Op 6 was presented by Dr. Nancy Cross, who is the section chief for career and technical education reporting and analysis. She presented the annual credential data report for CTE, which set out all the successful completions of data. It set out information about the districts that had the most completers, percentage-wise and in terms of raw numbers. Not surprisingly, the raw numbers, larger districts have tended to have a significant presence, but in the percentage numbers, it's districts throughout the state that had a presence, and I think those are the more valuable numbers in reading just how impactful the CTE program has been, has developed, and as it continues to develop. The number of certifications and credentials have expanded significantly. They continue to rise. Collaboration, I think, ultimately with our community colleges, Dr. Tipton Rogers, is extremely important as we move forward with these opportunities for our young people. And so this was a very uplifting report in which you could say there is still work to be done. We still have more that we want to do and can do and are doing, but we are making very significant progress. And so it was a very good report. Coupled with that came Biz Op 7, which was a report from, again, Dr. Nancy Cross, and this is a required legislative report for which is submitted every year for the board to approve, which is the number of CTE industry certifications and credentials that were resulted in teacher bonuses, to report on the teacher bonus program. There's 2 aspects to this. One is to report on the bonuses themselves, that is the amount of bonuses for the amount of money that was available. And Tier 2 subject matter was $25 bonus for successful completion. Tier 3 subject matters was $50 bonus for successful completion. And there's a maximum bonus number that one could reach, and several of our teachers, I don't remember the number now, but I believe 70-some of our teachers in the state reached the maximum bonus number. Again, teaching these Tier 2 and Tier 3 level students. So we've got a complete report on that and where the bonuses were going. The second part of that report is essentially, is it helping to attract and/or retain teachers who are teaching these subject areas? It's a very difficult thing to measure, and those of us who've been with the board for a few years I've heard the discussion about how you try to measure this or what the approaches that you take. And there was an effort to get surveys from teachers about, did they know about the bonus before they went into the teaching profession? Has the bonus helped them stay in the teaching profession, or has it been attractive to them to receive the bonus? So we got some information about that. And that's really probably as much information that you can provide, but it gives the legislature some sense of how the money is being perceived by our very fine CTE teachers. So that report is for your consideration for us to vote to forward to the General Assembly. Not this month, but it will be considered further after discussion for next month. And finally, the ESSER 3 update and proposals. So Alexis Schaus presented this item, and considering the massive materials and information, did a very efficient job of it. We have information about all the different categories and PRCs for ESSER 3 and the status of how much has been spent and what remains. We also got information about places where the money it has not been spent and will not be spent prior to the June 30th, 2024 deadline based on the purposes or the originally intended purposes. So that money is being, amounts right now to about $5.5 million, although that total is actually rising as we go. And we should expect it to continue to rise a little bit before we get to June 30th. And Ms. Schaus indicated she would keep everyone closely apprised about the status of that money and how that might be used. Our goal, of course, is to effectively, keyword, effectively use all the funds in ways that will be beneficial ultimately for our students before the time of September 30th, or have the funds appropriately encumbered as allowed under the statute by September 30th. That is the goal. Specifically at this point, with the $5.5 million that's determined that it's not going to be used, a proposal was put out for us to consider and think about. And this was a discussion item, and there was some discussion on each of the subjects, and I think everyone will have time to ruminate and come back and discuss further as needed at our next meeting. The areas of potential work are to continue to provide professional development stipends to teachers and to continue to support staff for the Rethink grant. That's an estimated cost of $1.475 million. Second area is evaluation and assessment of advanced teacher roles. That's a partnership. That would be a partnership between DPI, North Carolina State University, and the basis to improve the practices that school, district, and state leaders are currently using to select and evaluate advanced teachers. So this goes into a study for approximately $1.3 million about effective selection of who would be filling those roles. The third area is portrait of a graduate. It involves approximately $325,000, broken into 3 categories: online learning modules for portrait skill learning experiences, a regional training, including AIM 2024 Success Showcase, and then finally a crosswork, a coherence facilitation. And I confess I did not completely understand what that one was, but I should have asked a question for further clarification. But that's a small, and I should defer to the superintendent, who I'm sure does know exactly what it is. Do you want to say?
Well, Christy Van Auken is here,
Oh,
and
very
she
good.
does such a good job of explaining, so I'll let her have the mic.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good
So
morning.
the crosswalk is literally an opportunity for us to look at other types of programs in the state that also develop durable skills. So it will give us this opportunity to look at things like the ISTE standards and the employability standards that have been designed by CTE, and make sure that they're aligned with the portrait so that we're not adding any confusion, that we're actually clarifying the way we can use a portrait to support our students in our classrooms.
And I'll clarify, the ISTE standards are the International Society for Technical Education, or educators. So North Carolina is unique in that we provide a membership for all teachers to belong to ISTE. And so ISTE has its own durable skills, and we want to make sure that when it comes to IT, that we are crosswalking Portrait of a Graduate durable skills with their durable skills.
So at the end, we'll have a large chart that will show where the overlaps are, and will help our districts and our teachers understand like how we're cultivating these skills in multiple different ways and platforms.
Very good, thank you
Yeah,
for that
you're welcome.
additional information.
My pleasure.
So then the fourth area for up to $2 million is virtual summer course funding. This is for the North Carolina Virtual School. We would anticipate about 6,000 students would be enrolling in order to either make up classes or move ahead for credit recovery purposes. And so that's something that was done last summer, I believe, and was deemed to be fairly successful in reaching a lot of students and credit recovery issues. And there are credit recovery issues that are coming out of the pandemic. Yes, Superintendent Tripp?
So that's exactly right. 86% of the students served in our summer learning programs are students who are identified by their teachers as needing summer extra support over the summer. And I'll add that the national scorecard work that has come out of Harvard this week it indicates that one of the recommendations for continued academic recovery from the pandemic is summer learning programs.
Very good, thank you for that additional information as well. The fifth item is AI Collaborative, and this has to do with essentially a summit symposium collaboration cohort led by DPI with leaders throughout the state, and I think the contemplated number was at least 500 leaders around the state to work together on these AI issues, and particularly with respect to the guidelines that were recently distributed for districts. So that's a $100,000 item, and that's purpose is to get people together on AI and to work through the AI issues that are appearing. And finally, the last item is Extend Project Aware, which ironically earlier in the day during Secretary Kinsley's presentation, Project Aware was referred to as a successful and effective program by our presenters. And the request is to have funding to extend that programming to support students for $304,000. So those are the proposals that are there, and for additional information, which you may want to request, obviously the department would be glad to try to provide you with additional information in the meantime. But I think it's important that we take from that discussion and move forward in terms of being ready to discuss anything at the next meeting. It was a helpful discussion and a good one. We have two consent items for action. The BizOp 9 certification of two new North Carolina finance officers, very exciting, in Beaufort County and in Granville County. BizOp 10 is a very modest amendment to the Business System Modernization, PRC 153, that involves simply taking out specific vendor names and referring to vendors in a more generic way. And then we had the review of updates on contracts and any update on the monthly budget. With that, unless there are any other questions, we completed our report, Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair Duncan. So BizOp is bringing us items 1 through 5 and 9 and 10 for consideration today. Any questions for Vice Chair Duncan? Hearing none, that concludes our committee reports and discussion of our agenda items. Before we move to voting on the items, I'd like to share this one reminder. Today, February 1st, marks the first day of Black History Month, a time that we dedicate to remembering and celebrating the past and current contributions of African American citizens in this country and state. No doubt we're all the beneficiaries of those past contributions in ways known and unknown, and certainly our lives today are enriched by our relationships with our fellow citizens of African descent. So we look forward to learning in our next meeting the ways that our schools have helped us to celebrate and remember the many contributions of African Americans to our nation and our state. So we look forward to continuing that celebration throughout the month of February.
Chair Davis, may I have a very quick point of privilege on that?
Vice Chair Duncan.
Today also marks the 64th anniversary of the nationally known sit-in at in Greensboro at the World War V. I think it was called 5 and 10 at the time, but and the lunch counter, and there, when we had our meeting at NCA&T 5 years ago, I believe in 2019, we all walked to the Student Center past the buildings that are named for the 4 people who participated in that sit-in, and it was a remarkable occasion. One of the most visited exhibits in the Smithsonian, which seems to be on permanent display. It's been there every time I've been in the building, which is frequently, and it's a memorable time, a memorable occasion, and the people who were involved in that memorable occasion all went on to live very remarkable lives.
And to set a terrific example for all of us today. Thank you for that reminder. Any other comments?
I just want to,
Mr. Hall?
Mr. Chairman, just to thank you for taking time out to note the beginning of Black History Month, it being today. And I'm a firm believer in this. Black history is American history. My history is American history.
Couldn't agree more. Okay, so we'll move on to our voting on items requiring action from your committee reports. A thorough discussion and report was provided on each item, including any respective consent items. And a reminder that the consent agenda is primarily not complex and may have come to the board for discussion the prior month. I note also that board members have seen the consent agenda for about a week. At this time, I ask if there's a request to remove any item from the consent action or action on first reading agenda for separate vote. Hearing none, I request a motion to approve the following: the January 3rd and 4th, 2024 meeting minutes, HRS 2, ESNP 1 and 2, which is a change in motion to pause on the 2 applications and for further reflection on the model, GAC 1, EICS 3, SLA 1 and 2 and 4, BizOp 1 through 5, 9 and 10, and then the 84 limited license and 3 initial professional license approvals requested in closed session last night. And then one final item, we seek the board's approval to hire as our administrative specialist 2 position Ms. Danielle Saunders. Ms. Saunders is currently an administrative specialist in the Exceptional Children's Division at DPI, and we believe, in fact, we're certain she will be a valuable addition to the state board team. This approval and her subsequent hiring is contingent on completion of the remaining HR processes as well as Ms. Saunders' formal acceptance of the offer. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Kamnitz, second by Mr. Hall. Any discussion on that item or on that motion? Hearing none, Mr. Fafaria, will you call the roll to capture the vote?
Dr. Oxendine,
Yes.
Ms. Kamnitz,
Yes.
Mr. Keenan,
Yes.
Mr. Hall,
Yes.
Dr. Tipton Rogers,
Yes.
Mr. Blackburn,
Yes.
Ms. Moore,
Yes.
Treasurer Falwell, Treasurer Falwell, Lieutenant Governor Robinson,
Yes.
Vice Chair Duncan,
Yes.
Chair Davis.
Yes, motion carries. My thanks to our staff, DPI, and all those who contributed to making this a successful meeting. Our next meeting is scheduled for March 6th and 7th of 2024. I now ask for a motion to Mr. Hall.
Before the motion, may I take just 2 minutes, and I promise you.
Yes, sir.
I won't hold us up. But 2 things. One, I would like to ask, I think the Committee on Education and the House side, did they meet this week on the advanced teaching roles? they were scheduled to meet?
So an innovation committee met, but I don't believe that advanced teaching roles were discussed.
Okay, well, that's what we played, if it added that, I would like to know what, but that was, what was put out. That's number one. Number two, when folk are outside and presenting and whatnot, info on behalf of the board and the state superintendent's office, I think it needs to be noted. Last Friday, I had the opportunity to hear Dr. Corn present at our School Board Association quarterly meeting here in Raleigh, and she did an outstanding job talking about the teacher survey. As you well know, the North Carolina School Board Association represents 115 16 school districts across this great state. It was well received by the group. The questions, she was right on target in her answer, and the test did go from 200 items down to 99. And the use of technology now, and I think we just need to note that when our folk out there are doing things like that, because sometimes we get hit hard for things that we don't do, but when we do a great job, and I forget who was with her at that particular meeting, Mr. Williams, but it answers some questions for me. It's a different test, it's gonna ask for, and what it is or what it is not. That's important to me. I wanna thank you for allowing her to participate with the School Board Association, and that's all I have to say.
Well, Mr. Hall, I will certainly pass along
Please do.
your kind remarks to Dr. Corn, and I say it all the time, I have the best and most accomplished team in all of state government, so thank you.
Thank you.
Now,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing
no
me.
problem. Now call on a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Kamnitz, second by Mr. Keenan. Mr. Fofaria?
Dr. Oxendine?
Yes.
Ms. Chambers?
Yes.
Mr. Hall, sorry, Mr. Keenan? Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Dr. Tipton Rogers?
Yes.
Mr. Blackburn?
Yes.
Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Treasurer Falwell?
Motion to adjourn, yes.
Lieutenant Governor Robinson?
Yes.
Vice Chair Duncan?
Yes.
Chair Davis?
Yes, motion carries. We stand adjourned. Have a good day.